So, yeah, I think here we go. It's going to be, at least for now, a nice intimate group. Ginny and Denise have met since Ginny wasn't here a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But so today, the topics would be pharmacological considerations and patient assessment. So I would say that we should first see if anybody has anything that they want to ask about either of those topics. And then once we cover whatever we want to cover regarding those, we can, open it up to general questions about neurofeedback. So anybody with anything you want to ask about either psychopharmacology or assessment?
So I would say that anything that potentially has to do with the exam would be helpful to me. And I am working with somebody right now who is using cannabis. So anything that might have to do with cannabis. I'm working with somebody who's on an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety drug, although I have to say that their psychiatrist's goal is to get them off the medication and is very much in favor of the fact that she's using neurofeedback. And I think in that realm, that would be helpful for me anyway.
Okay, so I'll say things that come to mind. The cannabis, first of all, as a general rule here or idea, it can be hard to keep in mind the effect on the EEG of all the various medications. I mean, so there, you can look online and find things. We also had in a part of the course 1 or 2 cheat sheets about that. So I think the general rule is if a person is on one medication, usually there's some research that shows what the effect upon the EEG is. So for example, with cannabis, with the THC, pretty much the usual effect is an increase in the alpha band. So as you would train, you're looking at the spectral and you would expect to see a little bit of higher amplitude in the alpha band. Now, so then what? I mean, is this person who is using the cannabis, are they wishing to keep using it? Are they looking to get off of it? And what are their presenting complaints?
So they had sleep issues initially, and that has pretty much, at least at this point, resolved. They are dreaming more and very happy about that because they hadn't been dreaming for a long time. and their mood is better than it was. They were having some difficulty with some emotional regulation, and I imagine that some of that is still there. They have a therapist, so because this is a family member, I'm not doing therapy with them, so they're seeing a therapist too. But sometimes I suggest that they talk about certain things with their therapist. And in general, their theta band is much higher than the alpha. Like that, of all the of everything that we do in the training, theta is always the highest. And so they do feel better. And I've talked to them about that's the whole goal is that I've said for some people, cannabis can be beneficial, and for some people it can be actually problematic because it might interfere with how information is moved around the brain. And so we've made an agreement that any changes that they experience, they would talk to me about, because they're not interested in stopping the cannabis. They've been using it for quite a long time, and it made a huge change in how they were engaging with other people. So my concern would be, as their brain waves potentially change, it might influence how the cannabis is working. And I've said, maybe there'll be a time in the future where you might use less cannabis because your brain waves are going to change in a way that might do the same thing for you as the cannabis has done.
Yeah, Jenny, everything you've said makes a lot of sense. And since they aren't looking to get off of it, and since when you look, you don't see a particularly high amplitude in the alpha range, and the person has made progress and everything else. I don't know if there's a lot to say about that. That sounds good. And I think though you're raising the possibility that they may feel less of a need for the cannabis is a thing to raise, but they'll see. So very good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's reassuring. Thank you.
Yeah. Now the other one, who is both on an anti-anxiety and antidepressant, I will say this: when you have a person who is on more than one psychotropic, there is no way to really predict with any real authority what you're apt to see, because there is just no research on, is there a general interactive effect between various medications. So when they are on more than one, it becomes a bit of a crapshoot.
Okay.
What you see is what you see, but it's hard to say what might be a medication effect and what might not be. You can speculate again, because you can look up the particular medication, the SSRI may raise of the beta. So you can speculate, but because of the other medication there, you may have one that usually raises up a lower frequency amplitude and one that usually raises up a higher frequency amplitude. And then, so I think that's a situation though where you certainly need to convey that as you do the training you will do, the person may feel less of a need for it. They may actually develop side effects that they did not have, as the brain needs less of one or the other of the medications. I mean, it can be a little complex. It's good that you're working with a psychiatrist that it supports what you're doing, and that there is an agreed upon goal, if it's possible, to lower
Mhm.
the dosage or to get off, because they may be able, if a side effect emerges, they may be able to say, well, that's more likely because of this medication, and then lower it a little bit and see.
So this person also has a trauma history. They're a closer family member than the other person I just talked about. And I initially got them to go to see an EMDR therapist. And so we've been in sync with that, because the EMDR therapist is also in favor of the neurofeedback. And this person is actually doing a lot better in several different ways. And so we're at about 22 sessions now. Probably part of this, I mean, I'm so glad that the psychiatrist wants to take her off the medication, because she's been on medication for a long time. And I think she's dependent on getting through the day, regardless of whether or not she needs the medication. But she has listened to the psychiatrist, and I think she'll be open then to having some of the medication reduced. And she even asked me one day if when we continue to do this, will her brainwaves stay changed? And so we talked about that they would, and they could. I mean, you know, she might need a update here and there, but she is doing a lot better. And I think that is good overall, but she's got very high beta, so it'd be kind of hard to tell if it were the medication or if it were because of her trauma history.
Yes. Yes, but as she gets better and the psychiatrist is willing to perhaps titrate one of the medications, if it is a medication that typically raises the beta amplitude, it will be interesting to see if you see a lowering of the beta amplitude as the medication is lowered.
So I hate to even admit this, but I think I should. I realized after training her several times that I had my right and left side mixed up. So I'd been training her for a while on the left side when I had been thinking I was training her on the right side. And she actually got better looking at the left side. So then I used C3A1 and at the same time C4A2 to see if there was a difference on either side, and they were about the same, although there was a little more activity on the left than on the right.
And when you were doing this training, what was the reward band?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look. I don't know if I have that right here. I don't have it right here. Hang on.
Well,
It was 12 to 15.
yeah, so see, I think that frequency, of course, that's SMR, and SMR is only present along the central motor strip, and very often, often enough, reinforcing SMR anywhere along there will derive a benefit. And there's been research by a PhD student at, I believe, UCLA that actually showed when he reinforced SMR at C3, it also showed an increase at C4. So I guess if you were going to make that error, it was a good frequency and a good general area to make it.
Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, certainly if she had had a, a, a result that was problematic, I would have changed what we were doing and where we were doing it. But she didn't. She just continued to get better and better. So
Yes. Yep. Yeah. SMR along the central strip has helped a lot of people. It's really something.
yeah, great. Well, thank you.
Sure. Anything else about either one of those?
Just anything. I mean, I'm happy to hear all the things I've ever heard before over and over and over again, because each time I tend to find something new that I didn't realize before. So whatever you have to talk about, I'll be happy to hear.
Well, the other thing that I'll mention is it's important to make sure that your patients know that if and when they have a change in their medication, that they report that, because you may see a change in what you're looking at, and if they haven't told you that there's been a medication change, you may think, well, why is this, or is it the training, or so that's an important thing. The other thing that I will mention is if a person is taking a medication with a relatively short half-life, like the typical, ADHD medications, if they miss a dose before your training, you want them to report that, because again, missing that dosage could have an effect upon the EEG. If it's a medication with a long half-life, like most of the SSRIs and the SNRIs, if they miss a dose or two, it
Right.
should not show up. But if it's a short, fast acting, short, half-life medication, you want them to tell you if they have missed anything leading up to the training session.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Ange, anything you think of as a general thing to say about medication?
No, I think I agree with what you said. I do want to say, Kristen put in the chat, and this meeting's being recorded, but also it's going to be put on YouTube. And so we need you to, if you haven't already, fill that out. There's a link to that form to say that's okay. And for anybody that watches this, well, they don't need to fill it out, but if they're watching it, they have access to other meetings, and to participate in the meeting, we ask you to fill it out as well. Thanks.
Okay. Denise, anything you're thinking of?
No, I enjoyed that conversation though. I have worked, like Jenny was saying, I've worked in this field since 1991, and so I've worked with such different genres of clients that I have worked with people who are on antipsychotics and different medications, and now the individuals that I do treat. Most often what I see in my practice are anti-anxiety medications or antidepressants or both, that kind of thing. I have not come across anyone that has been on an antipsychotic in private practice yet. I have worked with individuals who have taken those, but I haven't worked with anyone who's on those currently or in the recent past. I would say that looking at that and then having also watched, which I am also very much enjoying the videos, I think you guys do such an excellent job at presenting the material and making it understandable because there is so much to learn and so much to know. And so foundationally, I am very much enjoying the videos and how many questions that you guys answer without like me even having to get a hold of you because it comes up later on in those videos. So that's been wonderful. But I would say that I do appreciate how much you guys really do cover when I watched the session on Angelica doing the intake and the interview and how much she really, it was very personable. It wasn't mechanical and it wasn't, as the form goes on, she didn't just go, okay, now let's look at this. It was just a very natural, almost organic way of getting the information from the client, which I think makes it so much, which I know, Mitch, you were the client, so you're very cooperative, but they usually are anyway. But I do think that that makes it so much more personable and people to feel that they can share, what medications they're on and what that looks like for them. Because I think that, especially after, listening to Ginny as well, that it is definitely essential to know what they are taking, what their experience is with that and getting a really good background so that as we, do treatment and we start, to see things that are changing and that they're feeling different, that we can work together on those medication adjustments because a lot of the clients that I have worked with, most of them actually see. I'm just gonna a nurse practitioner. Sorry, it's like I'm the older I get, the words are there, but they just don't come out as well. I don't know what that is, but most of mine actually work with nurse
I know.
practitioners, and there's a few that do work with psychiatrists, but I do have a relationship with some of those nurse practitioners, and so I do realize, how crucial it is to really be in communication and work together on treatment for individuals, especially as we do neurofeedback and start to see those changes. My equipment is on its way. I don't have anything yet, so I haven't started anything yet. So I'm just like you guys know I'm at the very beginning of this process and just starting in. So any information, like I appreciate everything that Jenny has said, because any information that you guys share or talk about is definitely essential for me in my treatment of learning and trying to figure all this out, because I do listen to you guys and I do recognize that, like Angelica said this several times, there's just not any one right answer. There's a lot of different ways that we can have an approach and different ways that we can do the treatment. Like I appreciate Jenny sharing, like, well, I thought I was training the right side and it was actually the left side. And I love that she's open about that because I know I'm going to make so many mistakes and I'm going to do my best and really try to learn this. But there is a lot to know, and I think that things like that happen, and I appreciate that. So for me, I'm just really excited to get started and to really start learning this, and I'm going to start with my family first. So I don't know how excited they are, but I sure am. So, I appreciate all the information you guys can give. And I'm like Ginny, anything that you want to say over and over again, that's okay with me. The more I hear it, the better I absorb it. So, anything like that.
Very good.
That's exciting. I love the enthusiasm. I missed like the first couple of minutes. Just where are you, Denise? And
She's the person in Utah, Ange, who works with, she gets students there. She's
gotcha.
She's
Okay,
a supervisor
okay,
for a
awesome.
university. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I was thinking of Nevada about something to say, but that's different from Utah.
All right. So let me say this about the patient assessment portion. I think what I would like you to leave that section with, the gist of it is that you're doing the assessment piece the arousal assessment, whether you do the actual arousal assessment or you learn during your clinical intake to kind of translate what the person is telling you into arousal information. But you want to have, at the end of that, you want to have a good feeling for, is this person susceptible more toward the over arousal side, the under arousal side, or the instability, because that will have a large bearing on how you will work the initial protocol and then the protocol changes. Again, we recommend that in just about all the cases, you first begin at CZ, because that is where you are less apt to get any kind of an adverse reaction. And if a person is sensitive and there's no way to predict the sensitivity, we can guess, because if they're very sensitive to medication or to, if they're a significant trauma person, we can think, yeah, they're apt to be sensitive, but until they actually train, you aren't going to know. And we do not, our rule is to do no harm, for the obvious reasons, but also you don't want a person, if it's avoidable, to have a negative experience in that first or second training session, because then, it can really make them wary of going on, and you need to do a lot of additional therapeutic work to give them the reassurances. So CZ and 12 to 15, because as Jay Gunkelman has said, it's usually hard to have too much SMR. So if you're rewarding SMR, the odds that you will get anything adverse are very low. Now, again, it can happen, but we'll talk about that. But the point is, you want to know, is the person you're seeing prone to over arousal or the under? Just a second, okay. Because if you begin to train and the person, you pause after 5 or 6 minutes or something, and the person says, I'm not feeling anything, so they aren't really sensitive. You're going to know within the first few minutes, usually, whether a person's sensitive or not. So if they say, I'm not really feeling anything, then you've got two choices. You can finish at 12 to 15 and then see how they are the first 24 to 48 hours following a training, because that's when the effect of the training will show up. Or if you feel confident and you kind of think they aren't, everything else about them says they aren't apt to be real sensitive, and they've shown they aren't real sensitive, you will then think about adjusting the reward band. And in order to do that, you need to know, or need to have your idea about, is this person prone to over or under arousal? If it's over, you will adjust the reward band down, and we ordinarily adjust, initially by half a hertz. If they are under aroused, you'll adjust it up. So the point is, you need to arrive at that first training session feeling, yeah, I know which way I'm going to go if I choose to change the protocol. If there's an instability, you should also get a feeling for, is it an instability with a tendency to be more on the under aroused side or the over? Because at CZ, you can also have a positive effect upon, instabilities, but if you adjust that reward band, you're going to want to take it in the direction that seems to fit the patient more so. And then if you also do some type of an EEG assessment, whether it's the one site CZ that the Thompsons have used, or if it's the midline assessment that we talk about in the course, or if it's a mini Q or a Q, you should use that information to augment, to support, to go along with your arousal assessment. I mean, you should see some kind of a correlation there, and that should also help you to have a plan for when you begin to tweak the protocol. The first thing you're probably going to want to try is to raise or to lower the reward band. That's usually the first thing you are looking. You begin to look for the client's optimal reward frequency. Not everybody's SMR is 12 to 15. Okay, some is 11 and a half, some is 12 and I mean, there's a variance there, and not everybody needs SMR training. You may wind up going down to the alpha range or to even the theta range. You may wind up going up to the beta range. I don't think I've ever gone with anybody into the high beta range. But the point is, different brains will respond optimally to different reward frequencies, and that's what you're looking for along the central strip early in your training. You are looking for, what is this patient's optimal reward frequency, and again, the assessment should give you an idea which way you will adjust their reward band. So, anybody want to say anything about that summary of what is the goal of the general overall goal of the assessment and the early protocols?
Well, I would actually like to ask Ginny some experience questions if she's open to that, because I don't have any experience yet because I haven't, like I said, I haven't got my equipment yet. But listening to Mitch and then Ginny, you were saying that you're getting ready to do your board certifications and you've done this, it sounds like, for a couple years. I would really like to kind of pick your brain and know your experience with this and like how you've use this, starting out and what it looks like for you now.
Um, yeah, sure. So just keep in mind that probably the first year of my practice was during the pandemic. And so I had my husband and myself to train with, to practice with. However, during that time, so I started out in the way that Mitch is describing, just trying to stay kind of safe. So if I felt like somebody had some issues in the unstable area, like migraines or concussions or multiple things there, sometimes I started with C3 minus C4, or I would go with CZ A2 and then finish with C3 minus C4. I was really cautious, and I still am with every person. So sometimes I'll train for 3 or 6 minutes first, and I don't go any longer than that just to see if they have any kind of reaction. And then I'll add 3 or 6 minutes, depending on what they're feeling, until we get up to about 20, or until we get to where they seem okay. So something that I've learned is that maybe I can see sometimes if somebody's brain is starting to get a little tired from the training during the training. And that's when I might stop the training, or in some situations I might keep on going, but I might say to them, you really need to tell me minute by minute if anything changes for you. I have trained using other protocols. So I've trained on myself a lot. I trained my husband first, and he knows that I talk about him. And he's had about 58 to 60 sessions with me, which was really quite important during the pandemic because he had a high level of anxiety, a lot of beta in his, I did a couple of mini maps on him. And I will tell you that, so as somebody starting out, I was really awkward and uncomfortable with what I was doing. And and he was so patient, and he's not typically a patient person. But I would do a mini map, and then I would look at it and I would go, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, or I didn't do that, or anyway, and I'd say, we have to do it again. So then we would do it again. And then I would learn something else and I'd say, we have to do it again. And it took me forever to get everything where I thought it would need to be. But I just kept doing it. And I found that the more that I did it, the more comfortable I was. So now I can set a person up pretty quickly. And I feel, pretty good about doing a mini Q or a midline assessment. And so for my husband, we just started doing a couple of basic things, and noticed that his excessive anxiety started to decrease. And he was relatively skeptical about it in the beginning. It didn't take very long before he said to me, can we do some neurofeedback? Because I want to be able, I don't feel really good right now, and I want to be able to go do this thing. And I think I'll feel better if I use the neurofeedback. And so I'd say, fine, we can do that. There were times when it was, pretty bad. And I said to him, we're going to train every day for like 5 days in a row, just to try to get a really good jump start on where we wanted his brain. And that was helpful to him. But he, just like him and everybody else, I listened to how people do afterwards. So if he had not done well afterwards, I wouldn't have trained him the next day. he seems to have a really responsive brain, whereas my brain, I don't think is quite as responsive. And I have finally started training myself because I have sleep issues every 2 to 4 days right now. And I've started to see my theta beta ratio inch up. So it should be right. The bottom is somewhere around 1.2. And mine were in the pits at 0.3. And I've managed to, we're up to 0.6. I've seen 0.8 a couple of times. So I know I'm headed in the best direction. But I also then track my sleep. How am I sleeping how many hours? And I do the same thing with other folks. I actually made a list and I give them a list in the beginning and I say, look for these things in the first 24 to 48 hours. How are you sleeping? What's your energy like? What's your concentration? Do you have any digestive issues? You know, just general body things, sensations. And so for the first couple of times, people will come and then they will bring the form. After a while, they just tell me what they've noticed, which is fine. It's good for them in the beginning. It's good for me. And we found that was helpful. And I've just tried lots of different things, lots of webinars, lots of, education. I've read a number of books. And so I agree that, except for the Thompson book, which I'm slogging through now, which I think is pretty easy to read, actually. The other books that I've read, everybody kind of has a slant of their own. And without really knowing enough, sometimes you don't know how to fit those things together. And I think that, as you said, Denise, that in this training that we just went through, so this is my second boot camp, and with Mitch and Angelika, and I found that having the videos, being able to do some work on my own before or after or during the time that we were in boot camp actually really helped me to understand things that I could focus more clearly on certain steps of the process, as opposed to reading a book or reading an article or even watching a video, because often they're just focused on something. And I don't always know how to put it into a bigger context. I don't know if that helps, but I was awkward and I made a lot of mistakes, and I think that's important to know, and we should know that we have permission to do that. It is kind of scary though, because you are messing with somebody's brain. And if something, happens to them, you don't want them to feel uncomfortable or suffer in any way. So again, that's why I just went really slowly. I don't know if that helps.
I think it was wonderful. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, this is recorded. Like, this needs to go somewhere. Honest to God, I'm going to rewatch it. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll say this. Yes. First of all, thank you, Ginny. That was very good. Regarding being wary, being concerned because we are messing with the person's brain, that's very true. Now, one of, a plus and a minus about neurofeedback is it's typically a gradual process. The brain does not change real quickly for a long period. The brain needs reinforcement over time to change itself, and so some people wish that you could see with everybody, not just the sensitive ones, changes very fast. Well, yes, but if you could see positive changes very fast, you would also see a negative ones very fast. And if there is a negative, you can rest assured that it won't last. I mean, because that's not the way the brain works. And so, and also, since you know what protocol you did to cause that, you then know certainly which one to avoid in the future. But it should also give you a clue about what to change to either, if a person calls up and says, hey, I'm really feeling this way, and even though it's going to fade, if they want, and if you have the time to have them come in the following day, if it's been around that long, you can have an idea about what you should train to facilitate the passing of whatever it is. So
When Denise was talking about, just that interview I did with Mitch, our practice has changed a lot in the past few years, and we do a lot of evaluations. And so I do a lot of initial interviews. It's kind of like initial interview evaluation, and then review the results and refer. But I really like doing the interviews. For me, I will actually at times frame it to people and say, we're really going to do some detective work here. We're going to try to understand what is going on with your brain, and I need you to help me do that. And it's a very different approach from, we never said this, but kind of like the message was, oh, how long have you suffered with anxiety? Or something like that. So I like that part of it, and to just really partner with them at looking at what's going on is very different from, you're the poor person that came to me who's the therapist, and hopefully I'll help you.
I would agree. I think that that's right. I know, and I'm sure, just even listening to Ginny, I'm sure she's very much like this. I let my clients know, and everybody, I'm a person too. I might be here, the one that is gonna, set things up, or provide some help, but we're kind of the same, because we're actually gonna help each other because I need you to give me stuff, and that way I can give you stuff, and this is more of a teamwork than anything, because I can't do anything without you, and I can only do what we kind of coordinate and come up with together. So I appreciate that. The other thing that I'm going to tell you that I really appreciate is where Ginny is so much, like having done this for a couple of years, listening to that, I absolutely appreciate that. And then of course you guys having done it for many, many years, it makes me feel, and I want to use this word very lightly, a little more confident, but I'm not confident really at all, but a little more confident listening to you guys, because I am very nervous. I am very nervous about what this is going to look like, how to, and like Ginny was saying, I know I'm going to make a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and I know that is going to be possibly frustrating, maybe more so for me, the one trying to, get it kind of figured out, than even clients sometimes. But I am a little nervous about that. I do have some anxieties, and I appreciate when Ginny can so openly share that, and I had to do this again, and then I had to do it again, and I think that so many things are like that. But I do get the feeling from you, Ginny, and also Angelika and Mitch, that when we partner with our clients and let them know that we are a part of this process, we are also in it with them, that when these mistakes are made, they might be a lot more easily absorbed and fixed and worked through in that way than this high expectation of, I'm the expert. I know everything, because I never come across that way anyway. I think that we work with so many people that definitely we would say they're their own best expert, and anything that we can get from them that helps us work with them is amazing and awesome. And I get that feeling from all of you as well. But I do appreciate the vulnerabilities that you guys share and the openness, because that does make me feel so much better about this process. I'm gonna have, I know, the anxieties for a while because it's so new to me, and I'm again at the novice at the very beginning, and just trying to get a feel for this. So I just appreciate all the sharing and the insight, and again, where we have this big split of where I'm at, where Ginny's at, where you guys are at, and then if the other students come in where they're at as well, it really helps me build kind of an idea of what a real idea of what I'm going to be looking at, and how this is going to kind of get started, and things that I'm going to need.
When are you expecting your equipment?
I just had, I think it was Friday. Yeah, it was Friday. I had talked to B Medic and ordered everything. Like, they're sending me my intro, pack and everything. So as soon as I would assume they've probably already gotten that in the mail, and it should be coming. And then I had to order it was very funny. The computer that I need to do all of that. When I had to have my son help me order that. I don't know anything about that. And he goes, Mom, you need all that stuff. What's all that stuff for? That computer's wild. Oh my gosh. And I was like, it's going to run some pretty heavy duty equipment. I've got to have all this stuff. He goes, that's like a major gaming computer. And so he was very excited about the computer part of it. He has no idea that he's going to get hooked up and we're going to run something. So yeah, so it should be very soon, just however long it takes to kind of get shipped and get here.
How old is your son?
He's 17. He's almost 18.
Okay, cool. That's fun. He'll be able to make recommendations for how the games should go. There's a lot in the games. There's a lot of games. Yeah. Good. All right. Okay, so.
All right, so I mean, we're at 12:57 here. So any last thoughts or questions?
Well, I have a question. So Fatima was here and now Haneen, and I'm not sure if you can hear us.
Hi, I'm joining last minute. I know, I just actually purchased the course, so I thought I coincidentally looked at the course, like timing for the community meetings, and I just randomly, I'm actually internationally based in the UAE, and I've been just trying to catch up with the course so I can get started on the neuro feedback certification. So I'm a little bit excited over here. So I will be starting the course and doing the 36 hours of learning. And so it just happens that I joined last minute. I clicked on the community meetings and it happened. It was by coincidence that you guys are meeting right now. I listened a little bit to what I think Denise was saying, just sort of. So I was like, okay, yeah, I think I'll be in the same boat as well. Just wanted to ask in terms of like background. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and certified in trauma and EMDR, and I've done a lot of stuff with DID patients, and I've done over the past 4 to 5 years, I've just been doing like trauma certifications, and I've been seeing great results with my patients. But one of the things that trauma experts recommend is neurofeedback, and this is something that I've really been wanting to kind of add and complement whatever I'm using. So I'm really excited. If I can just ask about like the results of neurofeedback with like if you if you are working with patients that do have complex trauma, and if you've seen results. I'm excited to apply on this after I do get certified to this part of the region. I think there's only 1 or 2 providers in the whole like United Emirates with this. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry. I think your meeting might be almost over, but if you don't have time to answer the questions, I completely understand. I can wait until the next meeting. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, we are gonna wrap up. This, what we talked about earlier, that is recorded and that will be on the platform before long, couple of days. And as far as trauma, yeah, we all do a lot of trauma work. I think almost everybody does anymore. Now, I mean, we always did, we just didn't classify it the same 20 years ago and know as much about it 20 years ago. But yes, absolutely, what we're doing here applies to trauma. This course is the same course that we use with the Trauma Research Foundation, but the discussions will be more broad. Whereas with Trauma Research Foundation, the discussions are mostly limited to trauma, and here we'll be talking about, all kinds of things. So yeah, definitely next time we'll bring up more. Glad you made it in for a few minutes.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think it just to add, yes, this has been used. That's why leaders in the trauma field are beginning to say people should be learning neurofeedback because it has shown itself to be a very, very good tool for trauma victims. And there's research, in it, and it's, yeah, I think you will find it to be very useful for yourself. I mean, for your clients. So
Yeah.
I need to go.
Yep.
So again, glad, Anine, that you joined us when you did. Ginny, thanks a lot
Thanks a lot.
for all your input, and we will meet again in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you. And Angela, I think we scheduled that appointment for Wednesday, I think, with Kristen. So I'll be talking.
Okay, yep, Kristen does a good job with my
Thanks a lot.
schedule.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.